Hypothetical question. You have a friend who likes to play games casually. Though they grew up with the classics, they tend to pick and choose when they have time to play games today. One day they ask you, I've been wanting to play a modern Sonic game. I haven't played a Sonic game since the Mega Drive, but now there are so many Sonic games to choose from. Where should I start? What's your reply? I asked this because Game Theory produced a video on the steps to introduce new players to video games, and Sonic was level 5 on the introductory scale. Joystick plus one button with one function and loose states. This was specifically for the Sonic Origins version of Sonic the Hedgehog, where lives are non-existent, but if you were confident enough, you could try your hand at the classic mode. And that's where we are with our imaginary friend here. They lived with these games growing up and have a basic knowledge of video games today. They love Mario 64, Sly Cooper, Halo 2, and is a big fan of Yakuza. If you have not played Like a Dragon, please do, you will not be disappointed. But Sonic as a series has just slipped them by, somehow, and it's up to you to introduce them to the modern blue sphere of Sonic. Where to start? The obvious answer will be Sonic Adventure. It's the first game of the modern era of Sonic, and it's the game that we all jumped into. It makes sense, it's the next game in the series, but if you look at Sonic Adventure at a different angle, it's kinda complex. It's the first game to have a deep story spanning across 6 characters' perspectives, 6 distinct gameplay styles, though it's technically 4 as Sonic, Tails and Amy have the same goal, not to mention how hands-off the game can be when it comes to knowing where to go next. Sure, the trains will announce where to go next at specific points of the story, or a character will say where they're going, but be honest, did you know exactly where to take the wind statue on your first try? Not to mention how dated the game is, which is a prime contender for a remake, hint hint. Sonic Adventure isn't exactly newcomer friendly. I don't know how we survived, but we did. The other obvious answer is Sonic Advance, a modern 2D Sonic game. But that's the problem. It's a 2D Sonic game. It's like buying a newer version of a car you currently own but with a new coat of paint. Sonic Advance is a safe option for modern Sonic noobs, though the game does have its differences, Amy Rose being the outlier. Sonic Advance barely dips its toe into the modern pool of Sonic gaming. It's not that much different from Sonic 1 or 2. And no, Sonic Mania and Superstars don't count either. That's just going to the same bar that changed locations and added a few new cocktails to the menu. So where can you start? Where in the 25 years of modern Sonic is the safest yet best place for a classic Sonic fan to start? Well, for starters, we need to have a set criteria. A. Are accessible for new players. Not console exclusive, but easy to pick up and play. B. Does not have complex gimmicks or gameplay. And C. Has an easily digestible story that doesn't rely on past lore or is badly written. So say a quick goodbye to Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, Sonic Free Riders, and Sonic 2006. As a side note, even though these games are bad and I would not recommend them for any newcomer, I would still recommend that they play them eventually. They need to be experienced in order to understand exactly why they are as bad as they are. Next up is Sonic Shuffle, Secret Rings, Black Knight, Chronicles, and Shadow the Hedgehog, all of which do not fit the criteria given. Besides Black Knight, which still has the best story told, but given how awkward the motion controls are as well as the steep learning curve, it's not newcomer friendly. Also, Lost World, whose parkour controls as well as his bad story don't make it the best game to showcase among what came before or after. Riders and by extension Zero Gravity have to go too. As much as I love these titles, they both have a steep learning curve on how to play. Finally, I have to get rid of Forces and regrettably Adventure 2 and Frontiers. Forces, you can all possibly agree, is not the best, despite how much I enjoy it. But the story expects you to have already played Mania as well as Sonic CD, Adventure, Adventure 2 and Lost World. Speaking of Sonic Adventure 2, while it is more streamlined than its predecessor, the constant switching between the 3 playstyles isn't exactly forgiving, especially when all you want to do is play another speed level. Frontiers has the same problem with its story. To me, it's the second best story of the series, but has a lot of lore dumps as well as giving an origin to the Chaos Emeralds. Not exactly the best game for new players who require a 3-day weekend crash course. Not to mention, it's vastly different from the games that came before. Open zone exploration, collectibles, and a focus on combat. The game is good, don't get me wrong, it's just not a game I introduced to a child, let alone a casual gamer who has not touched a Sonic game since 1994. So that leaves us with Heroes, Advance 2, Advance 3, Rush, Rush Adventure, Rivals, Rivals 2, Unleashed, Unleashed Wii, Colors, and Generations. I know you're all looking at Generations and thinking, didn't he just say you shouldn't rely on past games and lore? Well, yes, but Generations is a celebration of those games and is a core part of the game itself, rather than a throwback for its story. Also, Advance 2 and 3 distance themselves from the classic games more so than Advance 1. So all in all, we have a great selection of games here. More 2D than 3D, but all the same. So I ask again, which in this selection do we introduce the newcomer to modern Sonic gaming? Sonic Advance 2 and 3 seem to be again the obvious safe answer, modern 2D Sonic games. But again, it's just jumping into a new pair of the same shoes you already have. Rush definitely seems to be the first step towards a standard modern Sonic game with tricks and boosting, a new character to play as, and overall great sense of speed. But it is tricky playing the game seeing how you have to switch between the top and lower screens in order to keep up with the action. For Rush Adventure, I would recommend playing Rush first to understand the story. Sonic Rivals will be a more interesting choice as it is a 2.5D racing game, but that's all you do in the entire game, as 4 different characters. It's a racing game between 2 rivals. Yeah, when they're not rubber banding you and hitting you with every single special attack that comes across their track. It has collectible cards, most of which need to be traded with other people. It's Silver's canonical introduction. Rivals 2 is just the same thing, but with twice as many characters and voice acting. I cannot recommend a game that I am thoroughly bored with. It seems I'm quite biased against 2D entries of the modern era, but I'm honestly not. I'm trying to create a bridge between classic 2D gaming and modern 3D gaming in the Sonic hemisphere. I know jumping into a modern 2D game, whether it be classic style, speed boosting or racing, is fine, but it's not really pushing the boundary of what Sonic is in the modern era. This is why jumping into the deep end with Sonic Adventure was character building for a lot of us. We didn't know where the series was going. We jumped into the next game after another, not knowing where the hills and valleys lie. Speaking of hills and valleys, the next one is Unleashed, more specifically the Wii version. I personally like this game just as much as the HD version, but the HD version wins outright by having a decent werehog. I cannot in good conscience recommend playing a game based on the werehog stages alone, not to mention how tedious the combat is throughout the entire game. The daytime stages are actually fun and uniquely designed due to its unique take on the boost formula. Instead of a hold button, you press it once for a quick boost like in Mario Kart. But also the game design has a habit of forcing you to play numerous tutorials as well as extra missions just to advance the story. Not to mention, it's missing 2 stages that appear in the HD version. The HD version I would wholeheartedly recommend playing. If not Sonic Adventure, Unleashed on PS3 and 360 will be the next one on the list. But the werehog again is something that not many will be eager to play. It's better than the Wii werehog, yeah, but levels are long and repeating the same combos over and over just to earn more XP to learn new moves and increase your meager stats of the werehog is monotonous. Not to mention how necessary the medals are in Unleashed. Oh, you're level 2 in terms of medal collecting? Well, I'm a medal level 3, so off your pot and don't come back until you proved your worth. Another game I would recommend is Sonic Heroes, and I'm pretty sure I just heard some fans launch into the air leaving the Sonic branded socks behind. The design is a lot more closer to classic games, 2 acts per zone and a boss, and the gameplay, while sounding complex, is actually very simple, and by the second or third act you'll have figured it out. And the story isn't as deep as Unleashed. In fact, it's barely even acknowledged. The only teams that would have a classic fan scratching their head is Dark and Rose. Shadow being a figurehead of Adventure 2 where Rouge was introduced, and Cream coming from Advance 2 and Big from Adventure 1 would make them question why a frog and Chow was so important. So that leaves us with 2 games, Colors and Generations. Personal opinions aside, Colors is a safe enough game to jump into. The story is fun, the controls are simple, and the design of the game is straightforward as the classic games with numerous acts to finish and a boss to beat. But I would suggest Sonic Generations over Colors. Here's why. While yes, it does basically add 2D classic Sonic which goes against what is needed, especially after I scrutinize the 2D modern games for being too safe, classic Sonic in Generations does what's needed to do to introduce new players into the new eras of Sonic by having a tour through 20 years of Sonic, both seen and felt from 2 gameplay styles, or 3 seeing how the Dreamcast era and Crisis City incorporate adventure-style platforming, new gimmicks such as light dash and wall jumping that tutorialize prior to each stage to introduced in, so there's no alienating new fans. Well, what about the numerous skills you can equip? They are there, but you can beat the game 100% without using a single skill. Trust me, I've done it. Plus, I've been told many a tale of how Generations was a young fan's first Sonic game growing up, and using it as a jumping ball to check out the past games. Our friend would play and love City Escape and wonder about Sonic Adventure 2, or see Blaze the Cat and want to explore her character introduction in Sonic Rush. Sonic Generations is not only a safe, fun, and rewarding game to play through for both new and old fans, but is an interactive museum of Sonic's 20-year history. Tell me you didn't listen to the track Race to Win and immediately wanted to go play the game it was featured in. So yes, when it all comes down to it, Sonic Generations would be the game to introduce to our new friend of modern Sonic gaming, while also passing the baton on from classic Sonic games. From then on, they can try out the other games, like the 2D Advance series, and then play Rush and Rivals, and then travel through the new gameplay gimmicks and introduce new characters from Sonic Adventure onwards. Sonic Generations is a celebration of Sonic, and using it as a platform to introduce new fans to the past games as well as all future games makes this the safest bet.